episode. Today, with our usual simple and colloquial style, we will go on talking about wills. And we will try to analyze what type of wills are accepted by the Italian law and what is the importance of these forms. And now, let's see a clip together.
Pursuant to the Italian law, a will, to be valid, must be drawn up in one of the three forms regulated by the Civil Code.
The first regulated form is that of the holographic will. It occurs when the last wills are entirely handwritten by the testator, as well as dated and signed by him or her.
The advantage of this type of will is that it can be drawn up without the necessary assistance of third parties, such as the notary. Therefore, it does not impose to the testator to bear the related costs. Furthermore, its contents can be kept secret whenever the testator wants the appointed heirs and legatees to ignore the content of the testamentary dispositions till the opening of the succession.
On the other hand, its disadvantages are that the testator, left alone to himself, in the absence of any valid legal advice, can make errors that might invalidate the entire will, or some of its statements, or that, in any case, might then create serious problems to the heirs. However, the testator can always ask for the legal advice of an expert when drawing up his will.
Another form provided and regulated by the law is that of a public will. This deed is necessarily drawn up by a notary, with the instrument of a public deed, in front of witnesses.
It offers, as advantages, the fact that, being prepared by a notary, the latter guarantees its validity and effectiveness.
As a main disadvantage, in addition to the high cost in notary fees and taxes, there is the fact that the contents of such a will are public, and, therefore, easily known by the future heirs and legatees, from the moment of publication of the will.
Finally, as a third possibility, there is the secret will. This is that will which, despite having been drawn up directly by the testator, is deposited by him, according to the established procedure, to a notary, who will take care of its unsealing and publication at the time of the opening of the succession.
This form of will guarantees to the testator the advantage that, on the one hand, he will benefit of the assistance and advice of a notary, and that, on the other hand, the contents of his or her last wills will remain secret and unknown to the heirs and legatees until the opening of the succession.
As a disadvantage, this kind of testament imposes the testator to bear the notary fees and costs. The three forms of will that we have now briefly examined are the only ones that are valid in Italy. Any other form of will adopted by the testator to dispose of his or her estate, if it does not comply with the requirements of one of the three aforementioned types of will, would be ineffective. Therefore, on the death of the testator, an intestate succession would be opened.
The Italian Civil Code provides for a complex regime of nullity, voidability, and invalidity of the will, and of its single provisions.
Tackling this regime here would require an extremely complex and difficult examination, incompatible with our aim to keep this speech simple and conversational.
Even so, it is anyhow necessary to point out that, whenever the statements contained in the deed are certainly attributable to the testator, then the law often operates so as to ensure the preservation, as far as possible, of the testamentary provisions, even when the latter are vitiated.
As we have seen, it is of fundamental importance that the will conforms to one of the forms of will provided for by the Italian Civil Code: the holographic will, the public will, or the secret will. However, of these three forms, the most common and used is the holographic will. This is both because this form of will is the least expensive, and because it allows the testator to modify his or her will in a simple way, on his or her own, and without having to resort to a notary. However, let's never forget the holographic will requires attention. First of all, it is necessary to respect its formal requirements. The will, in addition to being dated and signed, must be handwritten in full by the testator, otherwise it is radical and valid. More than once I've seen holographic wills typewritten or computer written. Well, such wills are worth nothing. For the law, it is as if the testator has left no will. If the form is the main aspect to keep in mind when you want to make your own will, there are, however, many other issues that should not be overlooked in order to have a will fully valid for the Italian law. The matter is extremely complex and articulated, and we cannot here go into the numerous technical aspects that revolve around the holographic will. However, it is good to point out that those who want to draw up their own will by themselves need to read up well on how to do it, or rely on the help of an expert. Remember, a bad will always leaves many problems and difficulties to the heirs. Finally, Speaking of holographic wills, one aspect must always be well organized. Where and to whom leaving your will? It seems like a minor issue. Instead, several times I found myself in situations in which the heirs knew for certain that the decurious had left a will, but no one knew where it had been placed. In some cases this was later found after long and complex researches. At other times, however, it was never traced, and an intestate succession had to take place. Therefore, it is always good to worry about making the will easily available for the heirs. First of all, it is always good to put it in a closed and sealed envelope, on which it is well to write clearly that the testator's will is kept inside. Then, depending on the situation, all the heirs can be told exactly where the will is kept, or it can be entrusted to a trusted person, who can be a relative, a friend, or even a third party, such as a lawyer, a clergyman, or a fiduciary. Sometimes it is useful to write the will in 2 or 3 identical originals, all drawn up on the same day and time, and entrust them to several people. In any case, it is always good to avoid putting the will in a safety deposit box. In fact, normally, when the holder of a safety deposit box passes away, the box itself becomes inaccessible to the heirs until the succession procedures, including an inventory of the contents of the box itself, carried out by a notary or by an official of the revenue agency, have not been completed. This greatly complicates the situation of the heirs, who often have to start the procedure of an intestate succession, and then, once they have been able to open the safe deposit box and recover the will, they have to modify it in a testamentary succession. Well, also this episode ends here. Thank you for following us. Next Monday, we will face the aspects related to the opening of the succession. See you next Monday, and arrivederci.